How do I know I'm improving? Measuring success for your business or job. This presentation is to help anyone who owns a business, manages a department or unit, or generally wants to know if you're improving something. By having this knowledge, you can use measurements to judge improvement and thus the success of your business, your job, your project, or other areas in which you'd like to better understand improvement. The Veterans Business Outreach Center, Region 4, covers the entire state of Florida. We assist veterans who wish to start or grow a business. Our clients include military veterans of any service, the Coast Guard, and their spouses. Our services are at no charge to our clients, and we are funded by the U.S. Small Business Administration, and we're hosted locally in Panama City, Florida, at Gulf Coast State College. This presentation will go through 5 parts, and we'll start with Part 1, Introduction. The first section is an introduction for myself and for the materials to be presented. I am Janice Bengio, and I have an MBA in Healthcare Management degree from Western Governors University. I also maintain certifications in project management, credentialing, medical staff services, and healthcare risk management. These educational milestones have been beneficial in my career, which have included working in hospitals and healthcare systems, in service organizations, as a consultant, and as a small business owner. No matter what work I've done, I've found that it's important to measure progress and constantly strive for improvement, which are the reasons I've developed this presentation and wish to share with others. As we all know, the COVID-19 virus situation has created many changes and challenges in our lives and the way that we work. This presentation does not reference special or different ways to handle work due to the virus. So as we go along through the material, you might want to make some mental notes of any adjustments that should be made from what's presented to reflect the changes brought about by this situation. I'd like to make sure that we all understand from the beginning that making improvements means that there will be changes. If you improve something, that means you understand what your baseline is so that you can go forward with changes that will bring improvements. Most people are wired to be comfortable with a routine, so we will avoid making changes. Change disrupts our habits and standard operating procedures, which is not always an easy thing to do. As you can see from these quotes, you're not alone with understanding the difficulties that come with change. However, all of these quotes have a common theme, and that is that change can be effective toward making improvements. One question you might ask yourself is whether or not it's really important or necessary to improve. Is that just some business catchphrase that should go by the wayside? Well, I say that improving is necessary for us both personally and professionally. As an individual, improving yourself may lead to new skills or a more satisfying job. It can help you to stand out from the crowd and stay marketable. In such a rapidly changing economy, we know that the job market fluctuates, so improving your own education and skills can give you some assurance that if an unexpected job loss should occur, you might have an edge, and it also keeps your brain active, which could help protect against some forms of dementia. And of course, there's that sense of personal satisfaction when we see that we've done something that made a situation better than it had been before. As a business owner, or even as an employee, there are many reasons to seek improvement. Technology is changing more rapidly than we can keep track of, which makes improvement necessary in almost any business. If you don't keep up with technology and trends, you can bet that your competition will outpace you at some point. Today, more than ever before, customers are demanding, and they're not shy to let you know what they want and need. If we listen to them, it can help us remain profitable and sustainable. One of the most altruistic reasons to improve is what most of us want to see, and that's to make a difference. We want to have a positive impact on what we do, or maybe the improvement will benefit our community or the environment. You may have read the book Who Moved My Cheese by Dr. Spencer Johnson. It's a light-hearted parable about change that follows the physical and emotional journeys of the 4 main characters, Sniff, Scurry, Hem, and Haw, as they search, find, lose, and rediscover their favorite food, cheese. Each character handles change differently, and this story can be applied to any of us as we experience change in our own lives. That change might be losing a job or a business, a reduction in our savings account, a loss of a loved one, or dealing with the global pandemic. Are you one of those people that's driven by instincts, your gut, or your spider sense, or maybe just hunches? That's not a bad thing to have, but it's not a way to know if you're improving. What you think can lead to what you believe, but that's not always correct. If you think your new product is good because your mother told you it's good, well, that love from a family member could be a biased opinion. What if she just didn't want to hurt your feelings? Some mothers would be honest, but the point is that many people will give you the answers they think you want to hear. Or you might have a feeling that things look better than they used to look in your business, but what makes those things look better? Are you going through an unusually good period? An example might be of a beach chair rental service, and they believe that they are doing really well, but they learned that a lot of rentals came about because a few miles down the road there was a red tide and tourists avoided that area. The increase in those customers didn't mean that you were improving, but it meant another factor drove your customers to your service. When your sales go back down, it's not that you were doing good and then failed. It's that there was an outlier reason that caused the increase. And don't fall into a trap of a false belief that your situation looks better than a competitor's and not bother to monitor your own situation. There's nothing wrong with benchmarking against a competitor, but that needs to be done when you have good measurements of your own status, so you'll have reliable information upon which to benchmark or compare with another company. We all want to know if what we are doing is improving, but the only way to know is to measure. President Reagan's phrase, trust but verify, has been used in many circumstances. When credentialing doctors, this is a daily mantra of trust but verify. We want to trust that physicians applying to work in the hospitals are honest about their education, training, and experience, but we are required to verify that information from the primary sources that could prove or disprove any of that information. It's not unusual to find inconsistencies, and most of the time it's minor, but it is imperative for patient safety that credentialers accurately verify the information before the doctor is allowed to touch any hospital patient. Believing is good, but it's quite useless without verifiable measurements if you're trying to improve something. Part 1 Review. We discussed reasons to make changes, but there are few that should drive anyone in any industry to strive for changes. First, we should always try to improve. We need to be marketable and keep pace with technology and skills. It's very important to provide customers with what they want and need. We hope to be sustainable and profitable, which by most people's definition would equate to success. Part 2, What to Measure. The second section discusses what to measure so that you'll know if you're improving. You may wonder if you can measure improvement in your business or in your job. I would submit that any business, no matter what the industry is, can find many things to measure toward improvement. It doesn't matter if you're a one-person operation, such as a pet sitter, or a large retail store, whether your business offers goods or services to your customers. All businesses and all jobs can improve, which means you have indicators or you've selected items that you can measure. An example might be that you own a small pizza restaurant in your hometown, and you think that you're doing well, but another pizza restaurant just opened their doors a mile down the street. This new competition might cause you to wonder what you can do to improve your business, keep your customers that you already have, or maybe even attract some more customers. Maybe you and your staff get together and talk about what you can measure to see about improving. You might want to know how many customers you have each night, how many different types of pizza you sell on a monthly basis. If you know you sell more pepperoni pizzas Monday through Thursday, you might need to keep your stock of pepperonis higher than on the weekends. If you're making more deliveries on Saturday nights than any other nights, you might want to have less wait staff in the restaurant and more drivers on Saturday nights. If you measure the cost of ingredients, you might find that you're paying more this year than last year for cheese. In that case, the information might suggest you find another cheese vendor. If you find that you're paying your vendors on an average at 39 days rather than at 30, that could explain why your relationship with them has deteriorated. If you measure complaints from your customers, you might find that there's a particular server that has a bad attitude. As you can see, there are many types of areas that can be measured and thus improved once you have some baseline information. No matter if you sell pizzas, shoes, solar panels, or houses, look at what you could measure to make some improvements. In that example, one item to measure is the types of pizzas sold each day of the week. If I had kept a count of pizzas and averaged the number for each day of the week, I might come up with a table such as this one. I could display those numbers in many ways to visually see the data in different ways. The graph on the right is a 100% bar stack because the vertical bars show the total or 100% of sales of the various pizza styles. The bar on the far left is for pepperoni, so each number for each day of the week is included. I added the actual numbers on those bars, but that's an option that could be left out, and I'd still be able to see at a glance and see that I sell more pepperoni pizzas on Saturdays than any other night. That type of information lets me see what to expect to sell on different days, and so I'd know what type of ingredients to have on hand for the different days of the week. I would not need many anchovies on Tuesday or Wednesday, but I'd need a minimal amount on other days. If my anchovy delivery was normally on Mondays, I might ask that the delivery be made on Thursdays so they'd be fresh for the days I'd expect to need them. I'd also see that it's important to keep pepperonis every day, but have more available for weekends through Mondays. I might want to understand the patterns better too. For example, if I see that Mondays are busier than Sundays, I might investigate to see that people are tired from work or want to have pizza when they watch football. If Monday is a holiday and people are outside grilling with family, I probably wouldn't expect to sell as many pizzas on that Monday, even though most Mondays are really busy. It's important to gather data, but it's even more important to understand the data. That's done by investigating and asking the question, why? An example of a service-based business would be a consulting service. In that example, one item to measure is the source of your referrals. That's important to know how your clients found you so you can spend your marketing and advertising dollars where you'll get the most benefit. It appears that most referrals in this situation came from current clients, and those referrals increased in the second half of the year from the first half. I might ask if that's because I've been building my client base as I develop more satisfied clients and they let others know to hire me. I see that referrals from a magazine ad did not give as much traction at the beginning of the year, and that one is showing that the most increase is throughout the year. Therefore, I might want to continue using the magazine ads for a while longer to see if that trend will continue. As you can see, this data is exciting, but it will take some investigation to fully understand the reasons for the numbers. Understanding your data leads to information that helps you make the right decisions at the right times. Failing to do this could lead to wasted time and money. None of us have unlimited supplies of either time or money. When you think about your business, think about what are the most concerning problems that you have. Those are the ones you'd probably want to focus on measuring and improving. The first one listed relates to profitability. If there's something affecting your bottom line, that needs to be addressed. If you keep working on something, a nagging problem that keeps you from doing something you should be doing, that could be a priority. Anything that relates to human resources could be a wise choice to look into. If there should be a legal or regulatory change that affects the way you do business, it's necessary to address that. Supply chain issues can affect productivity. Cash flow issues can affect your ability to pay bills and collect revenue. Competition might affect your operations or threaten your success. Bad customer service can negatively affect your business no matter how good your product or service might be. Liability claims and the work that goes into legal defense of claims is very costly and time-consuming. Avoiding them altogether is best. Basically, any issues affecting your business or your job could be things that you would want to measure for improvement. If it keeps you awake at night, it's probably time to address it. Part 2 review. We've looked at two types of businesses, one that sells goods, the pizza business, and one that sells services, the consulting business. Regardless of what type of business you have or want to start, there are several common measurements that could apply to any type of business. On top of almost everyone's list would be to look at and measure the different types of sales that drive your business. Alongside that is to keep close track of your finances, which includes monitoring your revenue streams and the cost of doing business. We also need to be aware of and stay updated on anything that affects our business in the areas of laws, regulations, and compliance. One of the most critical features of any business is the ability to satisfy customers. Staying attuned to customers' needs can help limit or avoid complaints and possibly generate compliments. Basically, anything that bothers you enough to cause stress and keep you from sleeping is probably something that should be measured and analyzed for future improvement. Part 3. Analyzing what to measure. The third section, we will look at how to analyze and evaluate data to select what will be measured for an improvement project. Let's look at a real-life example, except this is a fake company. It will be my t-shirt shop. We'll assume that our customers don't like some things about the business and they've expressed their negative opinions on social media sites. As a small business owner, this concerns me. I thought that everything was going well with my business, but there's obviously some issues. Rather than getting upset at my customers that spoke out, I appreciate that they've said something so I can accept these opportunities for improvement. My preference would have been that they came to me directly to tell me rather than embarrass me publicly on websites, but that's not the way the world works. Once there's a dissatisfied customer, they often don't mind letting everyone know. So my best course of action is to accept what they've said and take it, dissect it, and brainstorm with my team to find out what we can do to improve. And when I brainstorm, I want to involve managers, accounting staff, salespeople, and a couple from purchasing. By including these different roles, I can understand perspectives from their different vantage points. And I also want my team to be as diverse as possible with gender, age, socioeconomic status, etc. I also don't want to have only people that tend to agree with me. Those people that are seen as difficult can be some of the best to include because they're going to bring out a lot of information, sometimes things that other people would not want to share with me. I will want to get this group together and explain the situation about the complaints. We then would investigate, discuss, and eventually come up with a plan of action. My team at the t-shirt shop sorted out the complaints and totaled the complaints by quarters for last year. We identified these 7 complaints. The parking is difficult, the sales reps are rude, there is poor lighting, the layout is confusing, there are limited sizes of t-shirts available, and the t-shirts shrank or faded. We totaled the quarters to get a total number of complaints for the year for each complaint type. This is our raw data. It means that it's simply numbers. By themselves, raw data doesn't reveal much in the way of clues. We can speculate and draw inferences, but we really have no basis for understanding the numbers by themselves. By lining them up from most to least for the year, we can see where there were the most complaints, which was about the parking difficulties. But we still don't know why and what type of difficulties there were. Before we tackle the problems, we need to prioritize all the complaints. One way this can be done is with a priority matrix. This is done with 4 squares or quadrants that make one large square. It will measure impact on the vertical axis with the lowest impact at the bottom and the highest impact at the top. We'll measure effort on the horizontal axis with the lowest effort to the left and the highest effort to the right. The top corner represents the quick wins, those things that have a high impact and don't take much effort. These items in this box are sometimes referred to as low-hanging fruit. We tend to go for them quickly because we can easily check those off our to-do list. The bottom left corner represents the fill-ins, those things that have a low impact and don't require much effort. They are generally saved for last or almost last, because it would be a waste of time and energy to do them since they don't have much impact. The top right corner represents the items that are major projects because they have a high impact, but they also require a lot of effort. These are very important and can make a big difference, but you need to make sure that you have all the resources needed to work on these items. The bottom right corner are the thankless tasks because they take a lot of effort. Because of this, I would do them after the fill-ins. You might want to make sure you have all the time and resources first to do these because it would require a lot of effort. As we look at the yellow box on the right, we see that the 7 issues that we identified in the t-shirt shop were identified as complaints ranked at the top with the highest number of complaints down to the lowest number of complaints. My group that got together would need to brainstorm and decide another block in which to place these complaints. For example, where would we put that confusing layout? The complaint is right in the middle of the number of complaints received in a year. The group may have decided to rank this as a thankless task. Why, you ask? Because it would take a lot of effort to move shelving and create a different layout in the store, and they don't believe it would have much impact on the overall sales of our t-shirts. Therefore, even though the number of complaints was right in the middle, it might be one of the last items that they would want to address. You might want to view it by the issues by seeing how big the problem actually is. You can do that with a Pareto chart. An Italian economist, Vilfredo Pareto, created a formula to represent the uneven distribution of wealth. His theory later became known as the 80-20 rule. You may have heard of this, as 20% of the people cause 80% of the problems. And that's what it means in this chart about the significant few representing about 80% of the problems, while the remainder represents most of the complaints, which are more insignificant. You may have studied quality control and learned about Dr. J.M. Duran, and he applied this principle to defect analysis. It also works alongside with Six Sigma methodology, in which continuous improvements lead to reduced defects. You don't need to work, though, in manufacturing industry to enjoy the benefits of these studies. As you can see in this chart, the first 2 or 3 complaints account for most of the problems, at least those voiced by the customers in this situation. Another way to consider prioritization of the complaints is to rank them by the probability that they will occur alongside with the risk impact if they do occur. By doing this, you might find that the risk analysis puts them in a different priority than the priority matrix or the Pareto chart did. In this example, the brainstorming group felt that being rude to customers would have the most catastrophic impact or result, and it would almost certainly occur, or that there would be a high probability of it occurring. In a small t-shirt shop, I would not want to employ people that are rude to my customers that took the time to come in and shop with me. And in this example, there was some reason that they felt this would almost certainly occur. Based on this example, that would be the main complaint to address first. But as you see, they also felt that not having enough handicapped parking spaces would also be very important to address, showing it to have a critical impact and believing it would almost certainly occur too. As we discussed with the priority matrix, the item to address last scored similarly on the risk matrix, and that's the confusing layout. The group felt that it was unlikely to occur, it would have marginal impact. The other complaints were ranked according to what they believed would be the impact and probability, and you can color code these blocks to quickly visualize the risk analysis. A SWOT or SWOT analysis is another great tool to look at information in another way. It forces you to look at a company, a job, a project, or whatever you're reviewing from these 4 different angles. The first 2, strengths and weaknesses, are internal factors. In the t-shirt example, they show that the company's strengths are that they sell a large variety of t-shirts and they're open every day with long hours to accommodate many people. Their weaknesses are that they have accumulated too many t-shirts of old inventory, and they found that some of those t-shirts shrank or faded. Let's look at this a little closer. Customers are happy to shop when it's convenient for them, anytime, day or night, when they're open, from early in the morning till late at night. However, the purchasing department ordered too many shirts from a vendor that they no longer use because of the poor fabric quality that tended to shrink or fade. That puts the business in a difficult position, because what good is it to be open with so many hours and lots of inventory if that inventory is not what the customers really want? As you can see, it's important to know both your strengths and your weaknesses so that you can optimize what you're good at and minimize the issues. Now we'll look at the external factors. These are external to your business, or your job, or your project, and they're usually difficult or impossible to control, but you can usually find ways to counter external factors. In my t-shirt business, I'm fortunate that there's no direct competition within the geographic region. Even though customers can shop online, my business lets them come in to see, touch, and try on t-shirts before buying them. This could change if other t-shirts would open up nearby. I also know that 5 new schools will soon open within my geographical region, and that would be good because clubs may want to get matching t-shirts for their activities. My external threat is that there's a construction project for the highway in front of my store, and this makes it difficult for my customers to easily get in and out of the parking lot. I know that won't last much longer, but it is negatively affecting my business at this time. There are also supply chain issues now that we have a global pandemic. I have enjoyed a great relationship with a couple of vendors in Asia, but the outbreak in that part of the country has dramatically slowed down my ability to quickly get inventory from them. I'm now faced with the problem of finding other vendors that can provide t-shirts at a comparable price with as good or better quality than I have now, of course within a reasonable time frame. When I compare these 7 complaint types to my SWOT analysis, it could affect the priority of what I'll choose to address first, second, and so forth. We've looked at a variety of ways to analyze the raw data that we've collected over time, and that's our baseline from which we'll do a project to improve the baseline. But we must first select what we will measure. There are various ways to analyze the data for prioritization. There's not one way that's better than the other. They're just different. The priority matrix looks at how a problem will impact the end user or customer against how much effort it will take to make the correction or changes. The Pareto chart organizes data from the largest to smallest amount to see where the greatest number exists compared to the more insignificant numbers. The risk ranking looks at the probability that something will occur and the impact it will have if it does occur. The SWOT analysis looks at internal strengths and weaknesses, as well as external opportunities and threats. You probably don't need to do each of these analyses for every set of your problems, but this can be useful to look at and decide which tool will tackle your issues immediately and set aside those that can wait for another phase or another project. Part 3 Review. In the example of the t-shirt shop, a group of employees got together and brainstormed to discuss the issues they saw as concerning. Of course, in your situation, you probably get information in other ways that let you know that improvements are needed. Once you've gathered some information, you'll want to prioritize it so that you begin focusing on what is most important to meet your goals. Analysis tools are good to remove subjectivity and see the facts, which is your data. Using one or more of the analysis tools will help you reach your goals. Part 4. Addressing the findings. The 4th section will discuss what to do with the findings from your data analysis and decisions of what to measure. Now that we have results, can we trust them? Hopefully your improvement project will be set up in a way that will remove bias and avoid errors in the data collection process. Looking into the complaints about parking, we might ask about how many times the handicap space was filled and how many times it was empty. If we had 2 people monitoring that spot, are they coming up with the same results? Did customers agree on the spots that were filled? How valid were the results? Did the spaces fill as quickly as a car left, or was the problem that one spot was needed by several people at the same time, but it was empty most of the day? Did customers overlook an additional handicap space behind the building? Working through these types of questions will mean that your raw data can be trusted as reliable and valid. At this point, the teams have prioritized the complaints and know which ones they will measure. They have set some SMART goals, SMART an acronym, and have planned out the activities they need to do to achieve the goals. They now need to determine just how they will meet these goals. They could choose to create either a formal or informal project. I would suggest that enough formality be applied so that someone leads the project and holds everyone involved accountable for their roles. A project requires a start and a stop date, which they've already decided. The project leader or project manager will make sure that the project work is managed and organized and that the work involved is accomplished. Some of these tasks may be done within the project team, which are discussing the issues that are occurring and determining the goals and what types of measures will be used to achieve success. Measurements are very important throughout the phase of conducting the improvement activities because it's bad to be at the end of a project and then determine the goals were off course. When setbacks are identified, decide if something can be fixed or if not, what are your workarounds? Be flexible so that you can pivot to alternative plans if needed. Repeat a PDCAA cycle if needed, which we'll talk about shortly, and measure again. Communicate as needed so that the entire team has transparency and a sense of buy-in toward the achievements. At the end of the project, be sure to share the good news of improvements with your customers and celebrate with your team that brought about the positive changes. Also, it's important to record lessons learned so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel when you decide to do another process improvement project in the future. As you decide what areas of improvement to address, be sure to establish goals. A good way to set up goals are to use the acronym SMART. S is for setting specific goals. Remember that you want to use action words or verbs to state what you're going to do. An example would be, reduce the amount of red meat that I consume. The word reduce is an action word and it states a specific action. M is for measurable. Your goals should not be vague, but it should be something that can be measured. An example to go with the reduction of eating red meat might be, eat red meat no more than 2 times in 1 week. This is clearly measurable if I make a chart or get an app to record what I eat at each meal. A means achievable. My goal to reduce how much red meat I eat is easily achievable and within the scope of my ability. I can choose what to eat. I can choose fish or vegetarian meals or schedule 2 times each week that I allow myself to eat a burger or steak. R is for realistic. Does it make sense for me personally? Yes, it does if my cardiologist wants me to reduce my cholesterol levels. And does it improve me in some way? Well, my doctor believes it will help me be healthier, so it's a realistic goal to achieve. T is for timely. I will need to set a specific time frame in which I will achieve this goal. If I do this for 3 months, I believe I can achieve it. I also need to consider any risk or contingencies. Even though I'm shooting for 100% achievement in my goal, I realize that I'll have some relatives visiting for a holiday, and there might likely be some other foods, including red meat, that are put out for us to eat. I might allow myself to cheat that day, so my goal is certainly doable with some effort. This example is personal, but you can apply these same types of goals toward your business or your project. Just remember to make them SMART, and that's specific, measurable, achievable, reliable, and timely. Make them easy for you, don't make them too difficult. Remember that most of us are resistant to change. And if you recall back to an earlier slide, we saw quotes from some very intelligent people that echoed the idea that change is hard. But it's the only way we're going to achieve improvement and ultimately success of our goals. Determine your goals, record them, measure to see how they're coming along, and stay on course to make them happen. That's sometimes easier said than done, but you'll celebrate it when you succeed. Now we will go back to the example of our t-shirt store and identified some customer complaints. After our brainstorming team looked at the 7 different complaints, they decided to focus on 2 of them in phase 1 of an improvement project. The decision was to form 2 teams, one to focus on improving parking and the other to focus on improving the attitude of the sales reps. A goal was set to reduce complaints for each of these by 75% by the end of the 4th quarter of 2020. The team took the baseline data in 2019 and will initiate the improvement activities at the beginning of 2020. By the end of the year, they expect to have a 75% reduction of those 2 complaints. That seems like a very lofty goal, but the team felt that both complaints were serious enough to cause the business to suffer, so they agreed to put efforts on these 2 points. As you can see, several SMART goals were set for each group. The first one for parking is to increase handicap parking by converting an existing space into one additional space by February 1. Other tasks are to be completed by March 1, March 15, and March 30. The group felt that by having these changes in place by the end of the first quarter would definitely make a positive impact starting in the second quarter of the year. The other group is for improving the sales reps' attitudes, and they'll start by surveying the current sales reps and asking what factors cause frustration, and this will be completed by February 1. They'll have additional tasks that will be completed in February and March. Like the other group, this will allow them to see expected improvements by the second quarter of the year. If they begin to measure for progress and see little or no changes happening, they still have the second and third quarters of the year to make additional changes before the start of the fourth quarter. And that's important because the goal is to have 75% reduction of complaints by the end of the fourth quarter. This cycle, PDCAA, can be used to begin the process of addressing issues after a decision has been made about what to address and when. The P in the acronym is for planning a course of action. The planning phase is important as it's the roadmap of details of the improvement initiative. You probably want to include all the questions of who, what, where, when, and how. D is for do. This is the phase of the initiative in which the work is done. All of the tasks that were developed in the planning stage are done in the second stage of the improvement initiative. C represents checking or monitoring for progress. Part of the monitoring process will be done by measuring against the baseline to see if the action results in trends toward goals. A is for acting on findings. When you do measurements during the check phase, you'll need to act on the results. If the results are not trending in the desired direction toward progress, corrections are needed to get back on course. If they are trending in the right direction, this signals that the actions should continue. The second A is for assess. After taking actions and making needed course corrections, it's time to assess the improvement initiative and determine the level of success. A completely successful event means that all the goals have been achieved and the project can be wrapped up. However, the PDCAA cycle often leads to improvements in some areas, but reveals other areas that need change or improvements. In those cases, the cycle is repeated to address the newly found improvement opportunities. These cycles can be repeated as necessary, but they don't necessarily need to be done immediately after each one has been completed. Each situation is different, and the available resources to repeat the PDCAA cycles should be considered. Now let's take a look at our team's measurements for the two categories of complaints, parking and attitude of sales reps. This is a simple chart to show the number of complaints received for each quarter of 2019, which is the baseline year, and the number of complaints received for each quarter of 2020, the year in which improvement initiatives were done. The chart of numbers is somewhat helpful, but it's much easier to visualize the progress with a line graph. In this example, the blue line is for the parking and the orange line is for the sales reps. Trends for both of them, as you can see, show trends toward decreasing, which is an improvement. But even though there were some increases in quarters, those trends both continued downward. That indicates the initiatives were having some positive effect and reducing those types of complaints. Let's take a little more in-depth look at those results. By the end of the fourth quarter of 2020, the parking initiative had improved by 72.3%, which is just shy of the 75% target. Unfortunately, that goal was not achieved. By the end of the fourth quarter of 2020, the sales reps initiative had improved by 87.4%, which is considerably above the target of 75%. Therefore, that goal was achieved. Do you think that one was successful and one was not successful? I'd say that achieving small goals, like reducing complaints by 10% each quarter, would be successful by many standards. So achieving more than 50% reduction in both of these items was probably an excellent achievement. But if the goal was 75%, one met the target and one did not. When we talked about the SMART goals, A was for achievable and R is for realistic. And perhaps our team reviewed the SMART goals when they did a lessons learned review at the end of the project and decided that the goal of 75% was too high. For future projects like this, they would probably want to set a lower goal, something that would be more achievable and more realistic. We looked at whether the t-shirt shop was successful with their results, and one measure met the goal and one did not. So what do your measurements show? Do they show improvement or do they show success? Do they show both? It really all depends on what you determine is improvement and success. If you increase sales by 10% for a particular product or service, that would be improvement. Would it be success? Yes, it would be in the sense of meeting the set goal, but you may not define success until you've reached a goal of 20% increase in sales. If you answer 90% of phone calls by the fourth ring, that could be an improvement if the calls had been rolling over to an automated answering service. However, if you're operating an emergency medical service, your customers might expect that the calls be answered immediately. If you enroll 50 new clients in the second quarter of the year, that might meet your goal, but what if you can't hire enough staff to service those accounts? In that case, you might be too successful, so there was no improvement because the success created a new problem. There are other examples listed here, so you can see that either improvement or success does not automatically mean that you have both. What you really want to do is take small steps of improvement that will lead to success. Sometimes you need to grow and handle that new growth first. This lets your business become sustainable and flexible, being able to withstand changes. We've been discussing changes that we affect and control, but there are changes that happen for which we have no control. So it's often better to work toward incremental changes and improvements rather than taking on too many large changes at one time. We have learned a lot about the parking complaints by the end of the project. Part 4 review. Whatever findings we discover, we need to trust that our data is free from bias and errors, and it should be reliable and valid. Otherwise, the entire exercise could veer off course from meeting our goals. Some projects are small enough to handle alone, but some will require a team. Either way, it's best to structure the work as a project, which will help you maintain the course. Goals are needed within the project, which ensure that you can measure for improvement activities and make sure that you build quality into your project. The PDCAA cycle is used at least once during the project and could be repeated in iterations to continue working toward improved goals. Your success in achieving your goals is determined by what you want and what your success will be, not necessarily what someone else says success will be for you. If you're satisfied with a particular metric to be successful, then you can say you're successful when you have met it. Part 5. The fifth section will explore some additional tools than what we've already reviewed in which to measure data. There are other ways that you can measure data to determine progress. Quantitative tools measure expressions of amounts, time, and parts through numbers. Bar and column charts show amount of time through side-by-side expressions. A pie chart shows a breakdown of 100% of the parts of the whole. A hierarchy graph would show metrics over intervals or algorithms. Tables show a wide variety of data in cells with an X or horizontal axis and a Y or vertical axis. A scattergram or diagram is a plotted graph to show values for variables in a table of data. A Gantt chart is a bar chart that shows a project schedule and includes a project status. A Venn diagram shows possible relationships between a collection of sets of data. Qualitative measurement tools express ideas, concepts, and thoughts with words and images. Some listed as quantitative can also be used as qualitative tools. Surveys, interview groups, panels, they ask questions and elicit answers. Diaries and journals record ideas and observations. Photos capture images in time. Heat maps are useful in viewing what user behavior is on websites. Maps chart geographical areas. Case studies record data from various sets of data. Checklists are delineated list of tasks to be done. 3D models replicate an object by showing dimensions of the object it replicates. And benchmarking is a comparison with entities or organizations. That can be done with words like qualitative or numbers, which is quantitative. Line graphs, as we saw earlier, are only one way to visualize the measured results. A lot of people choose tools with red, yellow, and green because they are easily understood by seeing colors that match traffic lights. Of course, we need to be sensitive to people who are colorblind and have trouble distinguishing the color variations. But if you use these, here are some examples of how they can be used, with green being good, yellow is slightly off course, and red means off course or not meeting a goal. The one at the top left is a popular way the healthcare industry uses red, yellow, and green tables to show how well indicators are being met over quarters. The one in the top right is a table that could be used when you have multiple projects handled by multiple people, and you can see if the projects are on track, off track, or somewhere in the middle. The one in the bottom left could be used for a single project to see where various parts of the project stand at a given point in time, and it shows a sliding scale of color, not an exact number. The gauge at the bottom right is sometimes used when a set range is established to show progress. Part 5 Review. Some quantitative tools are bars, charts, and diagrams. They can show multiple variables at one time to easily see ups and downs and changes in data, sometimes comparing with other data sets and looking at data in relation to thresholds. There are many types of qualitative tools, from checklists to maps, which reflect ideas and thoughts. Several tools will show both quantity and quality, such as benchmarking evaluations. Depending on the need, a measurement tool with colors such as red, yellow, and green can be very effective in quickly seeing where improvements are being made and where opportunities lie. Part 6, Key Takeaways. This final section will be a review of some points of this presentation. As a reminder, there's only one reason to collect data, and that's to do something with it. It's short-sighted to collect data and assume you understand it as it is. It must be analyzed to know what it is and what should be done with it, and then, of course, action is needed to move forward with improvement activities. When you collect data, try as much as possible to eliminate bias and have valid and reliable results. Repeat your cycles of PDCAA as much as necessary when working on a process improvement initiative, because you often discover opportunities while working on a project, but they can be done as additional phases of another or maybe a new project. Explore the various measurement tools to clearly express and visualize data and results. The monitoring phase of an improvement project should be ongoing, with the understanding that change is needed to affect improvement, and this is how we keep our business or our job successful and sustainable. Among the many benefits of measuring for improvement is being profitable. A business that fails to maintain profitability will not last long. Improvement improves satisfaction, and that's usually thought of in terms of customers, but internal customers or your staff are usually pleased too when we see improvements. It definitely strengthens the resiliency of the business, giving us the ability to weather those times when businesses don't do so well. Measuring improvement will also help the business last long, building in sustainability. We need to measure improvements so that we continuously improve throughout the life cycle of the business or of the job. Measuring helps us see where to spend our time, our money, energy, and some of our most valuable assets. If you don't measure, how can you manage? Once you understand what's important in your business, you can work toward making it better. You'll also find that these same business principles apply in your own personal life. It could mean a better job, increased wealth, or internal happiness. And I encourage you to look in the mirror and ask yourself where you can make improvements for your own life. What will you measure? Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to hearing your comments on this session and ideas for future sessions. You may request business counseling services by visiting our website, vboc.org, and clicking on the dog tag for Florida. If you're not in Florida, click the dog tag to the right to be directed to the VBOC that covers your geographical area. I wish to thank the Office of Veterans Business Development, a part of the U.S. Small Business Administration, for its support of the VBOC programs. I would also like to thank our local host, Gulf Coast State College in Panama City, Florida. Thank you.